Hello everyone. This course is going to be teaching you everything that you need to know to get started programming in Python. Now I am going to be your instructor throughout this course. My name is Awan and I have been coding for quite some time. Now I'd like to kick this off by start asking you a question. What is Python? Now I'm assuming that you probably have some idea of what Python is if you clicked on this video, and you probably know something about what it's used in, how we can kind of program in it, and maybe some basic background or actual understanding of any programming language. But if you do not know any of those things and you just randomly clicked on this video, I'll tell you straight up what Python is, and it's simply what we call a programming language. Now, a programming language, the way I like to think about it, is basically a way for us to communicate with the computer. So we can tell the computer things to do, like we can make it say hello to us, we can make it do a lot of things. And the thing is, Python is not the only programming language in the entire world. There are thousands upon thousands just like it. However, the thing that separates Python from other programming languages is really its how useful it is. It's easy to learn. It has many applications, and it has is very popular. They're popular, and it's got tremendous support by its community. So, in the case that you're stuck on something or whatever it is, you don't have to look up. I'm gonna try to help you guys throughout this course if you do get stuck on anything. But if you do get stuck, chances are 9 times out of 10 someone else has already made a video on the problem you had, or there's some website with the solution to your problem. So you just have to do a bit of digging around on the internet, and I'm sure you probably will find the solution to whatever problem you have. Now, this is all well and good, but what actually are the applications of Python, and why should I be intrigued in it? Why should I learn it? Why should I spend my time trying to understand it? Now, as I said before, it has many uses, but one of the main uses is in AI. So if you want to get into AI, so artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of those things, Python is one of the biggest leaders in this field. And AI is something which right now is a pretty new field actually, and it's growing rapidly. So if you want a computer science student in university or college learning, you might want to learn Python not just for your courses or whatever project you're working on, but also AI, because if you are going to do computer science, it will be an invaluable skill sooner or later on. And it's just good to know. As well as this, we can also use Python when making websites. So you might not know this, but things like Instagram, its backend, which I will explain in just a second what backend is. Its backend runs Django, which is a framework which is made in Python. Now you may not have understand any of those fancy words I used there, but don't worry, as we go through the course, I'll explain all of these words. So a website basically has mainly, you can separate it two components. We have the front end, and we also have the back end. So the front end is what we as a user actually see when we go into the website. So let's just say I go into Instagram, its UI, it's all built using, I'm not sure, but let's just assume it's using another program language called JavaScript. That's what we see. So as the user, whatever we see on our physical screen, that's the front end. Now the back end is basically the opposite of that, is what we don't see, is what happens in the background to make sure that our applications actually work. So this is things like, let's just say you're using Instagram again as an example. Whenever you log in, you have your login. Oops, I wrote that down the wrong way around. I'll just quickly rub that out. Okay, so you have your login and your password. So you may be thinking, well, whenever I go onto Instagram, I always have my login and password, and it somehow magically manages to work out what user I am, all of my credentials, all the stuff I watch, all those things, blah blah blah. But it's not actually magic, and there's a lot of work which goes on behind the scenes, and this is what we call the back end. So this connects your computer or your device to the servers, which the servers have the databases, and the databases hold whatever you have. So you could use a language like MySQL or MariaDB, whatever you're using. So you can use MySQL. Don't worry if you don't understand what MySQL is. You'll probably figure it out later in this course. But we can use something like MySQL to query through all the databases and find out what your login and password are. And then after that, it will send all the information to the backend, which will get your credentials and put it into Instagram, and then it will load up all your account information and blah blah blah. So Python is one of the most popular languages for backend. It is also used in frontend, but it's not really that good. So Python, it's mainly just used in backend applications. You can use it for front-end applications and websites, but there are it's not really the best thing out in the world. There's a lot of better technologies like JavaScript and some of its libraries like React.js, those things. Now, all of these things are kind of linked together because going back to the Instagram analogy I was at before, whenever you log in and get your login passwords, we have this algorithm or this machine learning algorithm which will automatically look at all the content that you're viewing, and then you'll get suggestions based upon what you are watching. So let's just say you're watching a lot of gaming videos. So Instagrammers which put a lot of gaming things on the channel, then Instagram's algorithm or machine learning algorithm would automatically detect which kind of content you're watching, and then it automatically forward you things that you'll probably like, so more gaming videos, and then that'll keep you on their platform for a bit longer. So these are just a few of the applications of Python. It's used in a lot of other things. It can be used in things like game development. It's not really serious game development. You can make 2D games with some of Python's libraries. I explain some things like Pygame in this course. So you can make small little fun games which you can put on your resume if you want, or show that you've got some good understandings of Python. And another advantage of Python is that it's also very sought after in the job market. So if you're wanting to get into Google, if you wanted to do something backend engineering, then for websites, as I explained here, then good chances are that if you've Python on your resume and you've got some good projects backing up what you want to do, Python would be a great language which those companies would probably want to have, and chances are that you might actually get into that company you want. So now that we discussed what Python is, I'm going to be showing you how you can actually set up Python. And to do setting up Python and to code in Python and do all of those things, we're going to have to use something which is called a text editor. And I'll explain what that is in just a minute, but a quick heads up, a text editor is basically a way for us to write down code and run it and all of those things. So if you remembered before when I was talking about text editors, there's also something else called an IDE, and beginners usually get confused over this, but I'd like to clarify this if you encounter both of these terms, so you don't actually get confused like the rest of most beginner programmers, and you actually understand the difference between them, because it's a pretty important thing. So whenever we're running our code, so whenever we want to write or run our code, we can use one of two things. So we can either use an IDE or we can use a text editor. So these both have the same usage. It is to write and to run code, but they both have different functionalities. So usually an IDE is much more of a heavier package, and what an IDE stands for, you may be asking, it stands for an integrated development environment. Okay, let me just write that down. Integrated development environment. So it may sound pretty hard to remember, but you'll get used to it pretty quickly. So an IDE, as I said, has heavier functionality. So it's got things like a debugger, which we can use to debug code. It also has intelligent auto corrections and auto completions. So it will complete the syntax that we may have missed out, and it will suggest us different different code that we can write down. So if we are typing down something like a variable, which I'll explain in tomorrow in the next episode, we can basically have suggestions pop up about the different variables we can type down or whatever else. The thing is about IDEs is as I said, they are pretty heavy to run. They're very system intensive, so they require a lot of system resources. So unless you got like a relatively beefy computer, I doubt you can comfortably run an IDE. There are lighter IDEs you can run, but popular ones, well, there used to be the popular IDEs will be pretty hard to run, but nowadays they're a bit lighter, so that you can probably run it on low-end machines. So that's right down there, they're quite heavy. Well, at least they used to be. Okay. So we know what IDE is, right? Now, what is a text editor? Well, the text editor is kind of the opposite of an IDE, but not quite the opposite. So a text editor also lets us run and write code. As I said, they both do the same thing, but it's a much lighter application. So you don't have those. Usually, you don't have those complicated, more advanced functionality like a debugger. You may have some very basic autocorrection. It will autocorrect syntax for you, and the thing is, it's easy to run. And also, I recommend text editors, and I myself usually use a text editor for my lighter projects. So I prefer this for especially beginners. I really recommend text editors, and the reason is because whenever you use an IDE, it will just hold your hand through the entire process. So you should get an error at some point, but the IDE will autocorrect some syntax for you, so you don't get that error. And this is fine for experienced programmers who have been coding for many years. However, for a beginner, it's crucial that you actually understand the syntax of your language. So for Python, we have to understand the syntax for it. For JavaScript, we understand the syntax for it. For PHP, we have to understand the syntax for other languages. If we don't understand the syntax on what we're going to be using, whenever it comes down to actually coding down a real project without an IDE, which you're used to, you will really struggle. Whereas a text editor, they're pretty much like all the same. So you can bounce from one text editor to another. You can go into an IDE if you want. You're very flexible. You're not reliant on having some advanced functionality to help you code. So this will help you in the long run, so you actually remember what you're doing and you actually understand what you're doing. However, once you become reasonably good at programming, I think you probably would enjoy using a text editor by then, but if you don't, you might just want to switch over to an IDE. So long term, it's gonna be beneficial. And so in this course, we're going to be using a text editor, as I said, and the text editor we're going to be using is called Sublime Text. So let me just write that down in a different color. Let's use orange. Let's find a free space. Sublime Text. Oh, it's 3. It's Sublime Text 3. That's the actual. It's the third iteration of it. So we're going to be using Sublime Text 3, and this can be used on any operating system you want. It's support for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and I'll be showing you guys how to install all of those things in just a minute. Okay, so now we're going to be doing is going to be setting up our text editor, and to do that we first have to install Python. So to install Python, you're going to have to go to www.python.org/downloads. Um, by the way, this is for Windows and Mac only. I'll be explaining how to do it if you're on Linux. So for Linux, you're going to be using command line. I'll show you which commands you have to type down, so don't worry about that. So once you're on www.python.org/downloads, what you want to do, you want to click on downloads, or you want to hover over this button here, and then it should auto detect what operating system you're on, either Windows or Mac, and then you're going to click on this button right here, which should say Python blah blah blah. Depending on what you're using, then it will basically you might be watching this in the future, right? Python 4 came out by then. So whatever version it is, click on that, click save, and then just wait for this thing to install. So by the way, if I've already installed Python on my system, I'm just going to be showing you how you can do it on yours. So you're going to click on this once it's ready. It's going to be opening it up. Let's uninstall Python. Because I'm going to install it on my system. I'll uninstall it, then show you how you're supposed to install it. So it's just running through this, is deleting all dependencies Python has. It should just take about a minute at most. Okay, it's finished. Let's click close. Okay, let's just open up the installation file again. Okay, so here we go. This is what you should see if you have not installed Python before. You're going to say install Python 3.8 blah 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 32-bit. Make sure it says 32-bit. There's options for 64-bit, but in my experiences, 64-bit does have some problems. So even if you're on a 62-bit, 64-bit system, I recommend using 32-bit. Then what you're going to do, you're going to click on here, which says Add Python 3.8 to Path. Make sure you select this button, this little button here. It caused me hours of debugging on trying to figure out why it was not working. So it won't really work properly. Python won't really work properly unless you click on this button. Then click Install Now. Then it's going to be going through installing Python. It should only take about a minute. And after this, you should have Python installed on your system. So here we go. It's just installing some of the dependencies it has. It should only take about a second. Okay, yep, it's finished. Now to verify if you've got Python on your system, just click on your taskbar if you're on Windows, or I think it's called Spotlight on Mac. I'm not really sure about that. Then just type down Python. Then if you got something saying Python blah blah blah, just click enter, and yeah, you got Python in your system. I'm just going to exit out here. So now you've got Python. What you're going to have to do, you're going to have to install. So I explained it for people using Python on Mac and Windows. However, for Linux, you're going to have to be running these commands right here. So if you're some Debian-based distribution, you're going to be running sudo apt install python 3, and then you're going to be running apt install python 3 pip, so you can use pip to install some modules and libraries. Then if you're on something like, I believe it's CentOS and Red Hat. I'm not sure if Red Hat changed their package manager, but it should be sudo yum install python 3, sudo yum install python 3-pip. And then if you're on Fedora, you use sudo dnf install python 3, sudo dnf install python 3 pip. And then for Arch-based distributions, you just have to run sudo pacman space dash capital S python 3. You probably should not have any problems if you're on Arch by the looks of it, because Arch comes pre-installed with Python, I believe. That's when I used it, but you may or may not have it. So for whatever reason, just run that command. Next, what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to install Sublime Text. Now, if you're on Linux, you're just going to click on this thing. It should run you through everything you need to do. And do you see this black dot here? That shows you which operating system you're on or which one you should install. So, oh yeah, to go, the website you have to go to is have to go to www.sublimetext.com/3, and then you're going to click. So depending on your operating system, where this black dot is. For me, is Windows 64-bit because I have a 64-bit system. I'm going to click on that. If you're on OS X or you're on Linux, you probably have a similar thing. Linux should probably give you a bunch of commands to do. OS X should have a similar installation like here. We're going to click on yes, and then we're going to click on next, install, finish, and here we go. So if you go back onto a taskbar, I think it's called Spotlight on Mac. I'm not really sure. We're going to type down here Sublime Text 3, and it should automatically show up. I'm gonna add this to my task. I'm gonna pin this to my taskbar, and then here we're gonna go to View, Sidebar, Show Open Files. This will allow us. Sorry about that. This will allow us to see which files we have open currently and the folders. And then we're also going to go where it says, I think, yeah, here we go. Go to Tools, then go down here. It says Install Package Control. Click on that. Make sure you install Package Control. Now, this is where things get a bit more tricky. Now, let's just quickly create a new file. So we're going to go File, New File, Control S to save it. Then I'm just gonna save this in my document, something like thing.py. So what .py basically means is telling Windows, Mac OS, Linux that this is a Python file, and we're gonna write Python code in it. So this is going to be the first command we're gonna run. We're gonna type down print hello world. We're gonna then do Control B, and then here it should pop up with something like this. We're going to click on Python. It should run hello world. Now this should work for so for Mac OS and Linux, you may have some problems with it. Now, in order to fix those, for Linux, you might have some errors saying bash not finding Python 3, blah blah blah. If you have, I believe on macOS, if you've got a previous version of Python like 2.7 installed, you may have an error. You may not have an error, just be running the code in Python 2.7 or whatever version you're using of Python 2, but we want to be running it in Python 3, which is the latest version for now. So in order to do that, I am going to go to this Stack Overflow here. So what you're going to have to do is that you're going to have to make your own build system. Now, you may be asking me what a build system is. This is kind of like a thing just for Sublime text. But if you go here where it says Tools, you're going to say Build System, and you're going to see a bunch of build systems. This is basically what Sublime Text uses to run the programming language that you're using. So this, do you know when I said add to pathpath? This is kind of where this thing kicks in. So for Linux users, for Linux and Mac OS, what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to open up your command prompt. So you're going to have to open up your terminal, and then you're going to type down this command. So I'll just quickly get rid of all of this. You're going to do which Python 3. Now, depending on what you get, I think for Linux is USR bin Python 3, and then I think for macOS is USR bin local Python 3. Don't I'm not actually sure about this. This is what I think it was when I had the issue. But whatever output you get from this, just copy it, and then what you're going to do, so just keep that on your terminal for now. Then I'm gonna go to this thing here. I'm gonna set a link for all of these in the description below, by the way. You're gonna go to this Stack Overflow question. Then if you're gonna scroll down a bit, so here where it says this, if you scroll down here where it says the tick, you're gonna copy all of this code. You're gonna right click it, copy. You could do Control C if you want. You're gonna go to Sublime Text again. You're gonna go to Tools, Build System. Then you're gonna click New Build System. Then you're gonna delete all of this. Then you're gonna paste in the one we just had. And then here, for me, I'm using Windows, so this should work perfectly fine. But then you're just going to select this, and then you're going to select whatever's inside of here, replace it with whatever you have. So maybe something like USR/bin/Python 3, whatever it is. Then once you've done that, you're going to click Control S, and then you're going to name this whatever you want. So let's just call this thing Python 3 new build. Okay, I'm going to call it Python 3 new build. Sublime build, it should pull that automatically. Then if you go to your tools, then you go to build system, and you should see right here Python 3 new build. Then if you do Control B, okay, I am getting an error. Well, that's because I shouldn't actually be using this build system. I've got my Python one right here. So if I run this instead, okay, it works. But for Linux and Mac OS users, that should fix the problem. Well, I hope it fixes the problem. Otherwise, I'm not really sure, but that should do it. Let's just see. This is in. I'm just going to delete this. Okay. No, I'm just going to delete that. Let's just go back to there. So that should fix the problem that you're having with the build system issue. And I'm now going to be showing you how you can customize this a bit more, because it's pretty plain and boring right now. And let me just quickly check if I don't have that. Okay, good, I don't have it anymore. So it looks pretty plain and boring, so I'll be showing you guys how you can customize this a bit. So first off, we're going to go to preferences, and do not tell you to install package control. I believe it was here, tools, somewhere, package control. You're going to install that, then you're going to go to preferences, package control, then you're going to type down install package. And then these are the things I like to install. So first off, I like to get my file icon set up. So this is going to allow me to, while it's installing, you should see here it's going to change this thing from being a regular Python file. Actually, let's create a new file just to show you guys. Thing2.py. Okay, it's still installing it, but it should basically change it so there's Python logos on the side of it. Also, if you want to increase the font size, you can do by doing Control plus 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 plus. That should work. Then, if you want to change the font or the font size specifically to a specific one, you can go here. I'll just set mine to 16 because it looks way too big. And then I'm also going to change the font. You're going to have to go here, press enter on that line. You're going to do font underscore face, and then you're going to do this. Then you're going to do that. Add the double bracket and the double quotation marks and add a comma. Let's just say I want to use Cascadia Code PL. Okay, let's just use light. Okay, if you get that thing about Sublime text part, just click no on there. Let's just do regular. Actually, this looks a bit too thin. Okay, here we go. So this is going to be your first Python program. You're going to type down print, then you're going to add open brackets or close brackets. It should automatically fill that out for you. Then type down hello world. And then to run it, just do Control B. And then if all the steps that we did before you followed them, then you should get right here, hello world. And something here is finished in whatever time. So congratulations, this is your first Python program. I'm really happy for you guys, and I'm excited to show you what else you can do with Python and how powerful it actually is in the upcoming videos. So if you did enjoy this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribed to the channel. And I would, in the next video, we're going to be covering about variables, what variables are, and what strings are, and some basic data types. So I can't wait to see you guys until then, and I hope you enjoyed the video.